No, dang it. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the USL Show, brought to you by Goals TV. We are back, and I don't want to speak for the other guys, but we are also joining the boycott with Volkswagen and Nike and whomever else until Greg Berhalter is out, or we're not, because I really don't care. Phil, you already, what's up?
Panama and Bolivia are tied. No, I no. Yeah, I was enjoying just like the fume last night. Like I was probably being a little bit too much of a heel on Twitter during the US men's national team game, but I was enjoying just sort of how upset everybody was. It was quite funny. As someone who's gained like a high level of apathy for that team, it is fun to sort of poke and prod the bear, as they say. And that is also a show I've been watching quite a bit of, but excited to talk some soccer.
What part of the show are we in? What we're already talking about the bear? I usually have to wait an hour and a half for this.
When the bear drops, it's what you talk about. That's how this works.
What? Anthony's already in the chat. Already, just here we go. Listen, lots to talk about. Ryan, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Obviously, last night was a big night for U.S. soccer, but I'm excited to talk about the best league for the largest country in the world without a men's national team.
John, how are you?
I mean, I'm doing well. I'm hoping that Nicholas Murray kind of brought some good energy to the world, and then we get a USL manager replacing Greg.
I mean, Ryan, I've tagged you a few times, but again, the Lily Part 3 article is just going to go crazy, and I'm here for it.
I mean, he is a Europa League winning manager with Liverpool.
Couldn't do it on a Wednesday or a Saturday night in Nashville, though. So, Ben, are you getting ideas? Oh, man. Listen, we have a lot to talk about tonight. That is not just the U.S. men's national team, because there's been enough discourse on that. Although I really like the initial camera angle. I wish they would not have switched it. I was kind of here for it. It's fine. Everything's fine. Where things are not fine, though, is Phoenix. Phoenix is on fire. The Rising are falling, and Danny Stone is out. Gets fired controversially. I think you can tell what is happening here when you look at the quotes and the comments and all the engagement, and nobody is celebrating. At no point did anybody call Stone a football terrorist. They were actually very sympathetic of him, and he gets fired anyway. And there's other things that have kind of come along with this, like, we got leaks of leaks saying that players were threatened over leaks by the front office. Again, leaks are leaks, and take those with grain of salt. But there's a lot going on in Phoenix, and it does not look like it's going to get any better anytime soon.
I'd love to know what their record was at this point last season, before they went on to win the league, because I'd be willing to bet that it wasn't that much better than it is right now. Like, and their table position is really similar. I don't know. The whole thing just struck me as really odd, because there are alarm bells going off at plenty of clubs, but with the talent at Phoenix's disposal, the fact that it's his first full season, obviously there's some continuity, and I don't know if they were holding against him that he had been part of the setup before. But yeah, the whole thing just struck me as really strange, and it just wasn't one of the coaches that I had on the radar of like, oh, this guy's under a lot of pressure. So not sure what Phoenix is seeing. I'm assuming it has something to do with maybe attendance or something like that, but John probably can speak to that more so than me.
Their attendance is up by about 1,000 a game.
Okay, well then I can't. I have no idea. So they basically had and Ryan's dropping in the chat that they basically had an identical record at this point last season. They had one more draw and one less loss from at this point last season from a guy who's now an assistant manager in MLS. So I don't know. Make it make sense.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at the comments from the front office, which have come under an insane amount of derision from the fan base, they've talked about that they weren't seeing an identity. The team wasn't going where they needed to go in terms of the tactical principles they had agreed upon, because Phoenix is really kind of a top-down, not sporting director model, but they like to have what they call the game model, right? Everyone's considering it. The manager is implementing it. But ultimately, if the manager can't do that job, then they're not up to the task in the eyes of the Phoenix FO. I think fans looked at an offseason where you lost Danny Trejo, you traded Manuel Arteaga, you lost Carlos Harvey to MLS. None of those players were replaced. That's not Danny Stone's fault. Then Guerra leaves. Stone gets a short preseason where he was not expected to be the guy in the first place. That's not Danny Stone's fault. You get to the pitch, and realistically, like, Phoenix have been very poor at times. They've looked very disconnected at times. That's something you can blame Stone for, but he's also been a manager for 17 games total in his entire life. I understand if you're Phoenix that you can look at this and say, listen, we know that Stone isn't going to be the guy in the long term. And if that's the case, if we think that he really just isn't a cultural fit, it's better to move on from him while the team is doing mediocre and maybe we reset. I think the way it was handled was incorrect. I don't know if the decision is right or wrong. Clearly, what they've done has not registered with the fans in a positive way at all. We've seen talk of protests from Bandidos and the other supporters groups. It's a bad situation. I think there's been some kind of bubbling discontent in Phoenix really since the end of 2021. This is where it's coming to a head. The title didn't really patch over those issues for fans who feel like they've been mistreated, that the experience is worsened for them in the Valley. It's an interesting situation, and I think it's going to be kind of walking on eggshells for a lot of people involved with Rising.
And I think the timing of this is really fascinating. You're coming based off of a 1-5 defeat against Memphis, which if you're looking for like a specific game that you just want to say this is unacceptable, then yeah, you can point to their worst loss since they lost by 4 goals against Sacramento at this point last year. But if you're looking ahead for just their next 4 games, you have San Antonio on the road, El Paso at home, Hartford on the road, and Colorado Springs on the road. It's really a opportunity where the team just isn't in Phoenix during this time. And I feel like if they would have done this when they had a home game stretch coming up like they do in August and September, it would have been at least met with a lot more backlash that you would see on a day-to-day basis. But the fact that they're doing this coming up on a long road stint for the team coming up ahead, I find just really interesting.
There is something to them picking an away stretch, right? And not wanting to have a home game immediately. But also that does give like Bandidos and whomever else, it wants to put something together. That gives them 3 weeks to prepare. And we know Phoenix fans, and I say that in the most loving way possible. We know Phoenix fans. They are as passionate as anybody can find in this country. If you don't think that giving them 3 weeks to figure out exactly how they want to protest, like if you think that's going to go well for you, good luck. Because sure, the quote unquote casuals, right? And which I always think it's weird calling any fan of the second division in the US a casual, you kind of have to be a sicko no matter what to show up. But the people who are diehards in your SGs, your supporters groups, they are going to be fired up for the next 3 weeks, especially if they keep losing. That's just going to be more, gasoline on the fire. And I think they might have just made this even worse for them. Then there comes this second part of where we have leaks coming out, and they are saying that players are getting threatened. They never said what the threatening is. We don't know if it's threatening of contract. We don't know if it's threatening of fines, whatever it is, just kind of vaguely threatened of leaking things. And I don't know. This is just where I have my personal opinion of the matter. If you don't want things to be leaked that you don't want to be out there, stop doing things that you don't want to be out there.
Yeah, on the leaks, from what I understand, it was our good friends at PHNX had asked some questions to the president of the club about food quality, about IV treatments that players had raised questions about to PHNX. And when Phoenix kind of realized what was happening, that their players were talking about this publicly, there were threats of quote unquote booting people out of the locker room. So yeah, I mean, that's not great stuff, no matter how you slice it. I would wonder if the PA gets involved at any point, depending on what happens here, but definitely a gentle situation.
Yeah, when I always love when someone's confronted with their own behavior and their immediate response is not, hey, this is why that happened, or this is the context. It's, how do you know? That is not good. That can't be the response. And more often, or I would say more frequently than we'd probably like to admit, that does end up being sort of the response from USL clubs of they want to control the narrative, they want to control the messaging, they want to be completely in control. And when someone finds out, their response is, why do you know that? Not hey, we need to address this, or taking accountability for their own actions.
And Phil, you've never dealt with a club that really wants to control the narrative.
I don't really. Yeah, I personally, I feel for PHNX. I've never personally gone through anything like this in terms of any backlash, but yeah, it's a little bit of a situation that, yeah, it's all too common in USL, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So I just think that this is kind of where I'm having to have my own personal opinions as someone who's not a Phoenix fan, right? I'm not in Phoenix. I'm clearly, people like Brandon McCarthy has been very kind to me and to, I know, other people around the USL who cover the league, very, very kind comments. Oh yeah, we are censoring. But yeah, he's been very kind, been very transparent at times, but they are clearly getting sick of him in Phoenix. There's a lot of good faith that has been burned through, it feels like. And I think Brandon is someone who's never been afraid of going on a microphone and letting it air out and saying exactly what's on his mind. And that's a good and a bad thing, because he kind of talks about the things he wants to do very openly, and that gets used against him sometimes. But I also think that this is when he can use that for his own benefit of being transparent about all these situations, being transparent about, we tried to sign a striker, but we just couldn't get it through the door because a player said no, because a team said no, because of wages, this, because of whatever. We tried. And, this is the reason, or just loosely, there was just ideologies that just didn't work up with Danny, that, It worked when he was an assistant, but not as a head coach. There's a lot of things he could come out and say that I think would smooth over and give explanations. Because right now, just kind of loose blanket statements from very carefully crafted PR teams is not going to cut it for Phoenix fans anymore.
I do think kind of the treatment and the way that people talk about Brandon in that role is kind of fascinating. He's somebody who's pretty unabashedly a fan of using data and player acquisition in a way that no other team in the USL is so open and public about. And that's always what people point to, even though, I mean, some of the signings that Phoenix have made, some of the players that they've discovered directly relate to that fact. It's an interesting situation with Phoenix fans who I would argue probably have the highest standards of any fan base in the league. Like if their team is below a home field advantage spot, you would think the sky is falling. That's a blessing and a curse. Like if you're an organization, I think it's great that your fans expect the best. They want a great product. They associate Phoenix Rising Football Club with success. But when something like this happens, it can come back to bite you in a way that really puts you in between a rock and a hard place. So it's just fascinating to see across all angles.
Kind of speaking on leaks before we move on, I do want to just kind of throw this out there. And this is not me saying anything about any particular person, any particular whatever. So if this ends up sounding like a snide comment or a what's the word, subtweeting, if you will, if it's not, I pinky promise you it's not. But this is because of the coaching carousel going on, because transfer windows have opened. This is when leaks do start coming out. This is when like your transfer rumors start happening, your coaching rumors start happening, these all different kinds of rumors start happening. There's a lot of language that is used, like the word interest, right? Like this team has interest in signing this player. This team has interest in signing this coach, this team, whatever, right? Like, listen, when I was younger, I was interested in dating Anna Kendrick. I was interested, meant nothing, right? You know, there's a lot of teams that are interested in a lot of things. Doesn't mean that there's any smoke to the fire, right? Also, agents talk a lot, and they are doing a lot of things to leverage their player or their coach to get them a little bit more money on the back end or raise some prices up. That may not be real. Okay. So take everything with a grain of salt.
So what you're telling me is Mark Briggs has gone to San Jose.
Yeah. It's
you heard that
actually
leak here first.
Yeah.
Actually, this is John Fisher trying to make things better in Oakland, because if Briggs is gone to San Jose, then when they go to play when the Roots go to play Sacramento, they're not going to have Briggs.
When we are there, by the way.
When we are there. Yeah. Plug. #ad. So yeah, that's what's happening. Just
moral of the story, if the Twitter account is called like Soccer Man and has the picture of an egg, it's probably not reliable.
I wasn't going to do anything, but thank you, John.
I will.
Fair enough. All right, let's get into a little fun stuff. We have the W League playoffs, just kind of among us. And it is very, very exciting. We have just a lot of fun matchups. There's some that have been, we've seen in the past. We have seen now Indy 11 Minnesota Aurora play 3 years in a row now. Last year in the conference final, a couple years ago in the quarterfinal. We're seeing Colorado Storm versus California Storm, which is just fun. Detroit City makes the W League playoffs for the first time, and Phil's club, the River Lights, are in on their first time of asking, because they are the real deal. Oakland Soul and SC Olympia, they have been duking it out all year long. They've been a ton of fun to watch, and they are just been a blast. You have NC Courage who have played very well in this league, going against Lancaster Inferno. You have Long Island Rough Riders and Eagle FC, both who made the playoffs last year. Very fun. And then you have Florida Elite Soccer Academy taking on Asheville City. Asheville City, who I just being honest, I have a special place in my heart because they've been around for a long time, and I care about that kind of stuff. And then AHFC Royals taking on Tennessee SC. Tennessee SC, who has a current, I think U23 U.S. women's national team striker in their ranks. She's very good. I've seen her in person. It's terrifying how much better than she is than everybody else. There's a lot of good teams, a lot of good players here. Just super fun stuff on the horizon for the W League.
Yeah, I mean, my Indy 11 women, I am scared to death about this Minnesota Aurora matchup. The 11 in their last game got their teeth kicked in by Racing Lou. That's not great in a rivalry game right before you're taking on Aurora, who are always one of the elite teams. And Indy got past them 1-0 in the playoffs last year, but this is going to be a great matchup. Very cool to see Oakland Soul doing so well. And I mean, knocking out San Francisco Glens in that regular season finale in a massive win. Really great storyline there. I'm excited about Detroit City, I have to say. Like the way that the supporters group shows up for them, much like they do with the men's side, much like they do with everything else in Detroit, is amazing. That's going to be dynamite to see. So really exciting playoff field across the board.
For as much love as I have for the rest of the bracket, that Central Division side of the bracket is just so good because it is just marquee name. And then Riverlight, who are the newcomers on the scene, and are really announcing themselves in a big way. The fact that they get to play in front of that Detroit crowd, I think will be a new level in W League for Riverlight in particular. But yeah, I think when you have a team that needed to the points per match tiebreaker to make the playoffs when they had 8 wins, it just shows how competitive this league is. And a team, that scored 49 goals this season was a distant second in terms of goals scored in that division with with Minnesota Aurora having a plus 55 goal differential in just 13 regular season games or whatever. Ridiculous. So yeah, it's absolutely insane. The whole thing, it's a great league, amazing opportunity across the board, and I am really looking forward to a lot of these matchups.
I actually have my eye on the other half of the bracket, specifically within the Southern Division, because you have 2 teams that could be meeting in the next round if they both win, with the AHFC Royals and Florida Elite Soccer Academy, who did not lose a game this entire regular season. And you're looking at 2 of these teams that have just insane goal differentials. Like Florida Elite has a 67 goal differential, whereas AHFC was just phenomenal this year as well, with just 4 goals conceded on the season. That is a matchup that I would love to see happen in the second round, and especially Long Island Rough Riders have put in a tremendous performance as well with a 60 goal differential on the season. Also went unbeaten on the year. It's just a fantastic side of the bracket that's going to be super competitive.
I mean, you talk about the Rough Riders. One of the players that is on that team that's been one of their leading goal scorers this year is Gianna Paul, who she's a UA player. She played at the University of Alabama. I was at her first game at Alabama, and now she's, one of the, I think, junior, senior there. And it's really cool seeing her grow up. And she's a certified goal scorer, man. She is something else. The Detroit game, that one has some fun storylines. If you just want to look at one of the people there, if I'm remembering correctly, I believe it's Kayla Addison, who has been there for a long time. I think she's 33 now, and she has been playing for the Detroit indoor team. She has been playing for just when they were in UWS, I think WPSL, they were around, and she's been around forever. And on top of just everything else going on, I think that's why this league is super cool, is because you see someone who's 33, older, who they're just playing because they love the game, but they're also experienced, and there are young players on these teams, very young high schoolers, who have a lot to learn, and those kind of players are around to teach them the ropes, and that's really cool.
On the Rough Riders, real quick, like this is an organization that's been around since the early 90s on the men's side. To see them successfully transition, get into the W League, it's what you want to see across the board for every team in League Two, every team in League One in the championship, to foster that sort of thing. So just fantastic. Excited to take in these games and see where it all goes.
Well, we are going to go ahead and move on to our call-in. Now, I want to just go ahead and tell you people, it says in the voicemail, keep it to just a minute or less. We don't have all day long, even though I can talk all day long. And try to keep the profanity out of it. While you do hear some of us cuss a little bit, it's a little bit different when it's a caller calling in. And if you drop a word, that's okay, but don't use as many. So this week we only have the one call that's usable, despite having about 7 calls. So please just listen to what I say in the voicemail, people. It's super simple instructions. And if you have to call back because you went long, just do it, please. So y'all tell me if y'all can't hear it. It should be good to go.
Hey, my name's Fisher. I'm from Pittsburgh. Go Hounds. I was just wondering what your guys' thoughts are on the Hounds offense. Why can't it get going? Is Kizza a bust? We move on from Kizza. Is it Kizza's even the fault? Should we look at Cosby Sterling as the number 1 starter? But yeah, I just want to know what you guys thought on why we can't score any goals for the life of us. I'm sick of watching unders.
Disgruntled Pittsburgh fan who wants to see goals, shockingly enough. I'm just going to sit there and just throw it out there. I think Sterling should be starting for them. I love what he does on and off the ball. I think that he looks fantastic. And when he's played, I thought he has been the spark of life that they've needed.
I think Pittsburgh's system doesn't fit him very well. Like, he's had moments of individual quality that don't really mesh with what the Riverhounds need in a forward. This is a club that plays more long balls than anybody. Sterling's not that kind of battler on the end of the long distribution. I mean, Kizza's not been great either, let's be real. Like, I don't think any of the forwards on this roster right now are up to the task. I think Pittsburgh's main issue is that so often they're unable to access the center of the pitch, right? Like, you're building through Junior Eto and Langston Blackstock. Canardo Forbes doesn't have an assist yet this season. That's crazy. He's, I think, 50th in the league in chances created. This is from the guy who should be one of the best creators in the league. And I think formationally, you've seen a shift into more of a 3-4-3 instead of the 3-5-2. That's had Robbie Mertz playing as the right winger most of the time. Mertz is fine in that role, but he doesn't really have the speed to take players on. He'd be better served in the midfield, giving you a bit more of the central presence to ask questions in the areas where you can hurt somebody with control, where you can build with a little bit more tempo. And then if you're getting the ball to Sterling with some of that possessive momentum built up, that's where he's at his best, when he can take players on, when he can poach in the box. Right now, it's too direct. It's too limited to the outsides, and it's just not working.
It's, yeah, I mean, you mentioned their creation, John, and like it coming from wide areas. Etu and Blackstock are their top assisters, each with 2 apiece. Yeah. And it's just, yeah, there's just not any production coming from central areas. And to your point, John, I don't think, like you said, I don't think Keziah Sterling necessarily answers the question, because unfortunately he needs to be receiving the ball to feet, like, and facing the goal. And it's just not the style that Hounds play. I think they wanted Kizza to be a plug and play, like, sort of replacement for Dikwa, and he is not that, unfortunately.
He's been there longer than Dikwa, though. They should know that he's not Dikwa.
Hey.
Well, they got with Dikwa, they got that sort of, okay, he's mediocre for 2 seasons, and then we give him the shot and he shines. I think Lily was just kind of banking on that.
Ryan, before I get anything, do you have anything on this?
Yeah, well, what I found interesting is that through the start of the season, Pittsburgh have already been shut out 10 times on the year. They were shut out 9 times all throughout last year, and it's just been incredibly inept. But if you look at like Keziah Sterling as well, like 14 of his shots this season have been 10 of which have been on target, and the 3 games that he's scored a goal in, Pittsburgh hasn't lost any of those matches, which I do think is at least somewhat notable. But yeah, the issues are glaring for pretty much all to see.
I think the big deal for me with them moving away from that 3-5-2 and pulling Mertz out of the midfield, I don't think Sterling can work in that. If they want someone they can just lump the ball up long to, they also have EJ Johnson on the field, who's very quick and causes trouble. He is a presser's presser. He goes on what I like to just call golden retriever duty, which is see ball, get ball. Like that, he is very good at it, and that's kind of what they need as well. But maybe he doesn't have the finishing quality that they want, but also no one has the finishing quality in Pittsburgh that they want. So they might as well create more. They might as well just try to create more chances, because surely some of them will eventually start to go in.
You
What
say
if
that, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I'm totally telling a joke. What if they went full golden retriever mode and used the Airbud loophole to get a goal scorer in there? It's on brand. Riverhounds. I mean, that feels like a natural response. And honestly, I don't know why Lily hasn't gone to it yet.
It's disqualifying for his national team case, frankly. No, but Pittsburgh, if you look at the expected numbers, they should have 26 goals right now. They've got 11. And I think this is where XG can be misleading, because so often Pittsburgh has given up something early in the game, which is very against their identity. And then they're facing a set defense, pelting shots from tight angles in crowds of players. It's inflated in a way where, yeah, they're getting chances, but they're very low quality chances. Throw in the fact that none of the strikers are, outside of Sterling, are particularly good finishers to begin with, and you've got a real problem.
I mean, you kind of talk about XG numbers getting, just kind of confusing and stuff like that. I like using the expected goals of shots on target for that very reason, because if the ball isn't on target, then it had no chance of going in. Like, yes, it tells you the chances that could be created, and just like what kind of chances are created. But also, I feel like if you were to find those numbers of expected goals on target, or XCG, I think Y Scout puts it as, then I'm sure that is going to be a completely different number, because they're just not putting anything on target. Like, they're shooting and nothing's even on target.
Ben, if you wanted a film reference, that was 15 hours of game time that Pittsburgh's been shut out this year. That equates to about 20% of How I Met Your Mother.
Wow.
I don't know why that 20% number is hitting me so specifically. Like, you have now reached the 20% mark of How I Met Your Mother.
All right. Unless anybody has anything else on this, let's go ahead and get into our USL Tactics show, brought to you by John.
Sacramento has the best defensive record in the league, having allowed just 12 goals all season long. We saw a new side to them this weekend against Hartford Athletic. In that matchup, Sacramento really hinged their 3-4-3 press upfield, relying on their wingbacks and their center backs to get involved well past the halfway line to put in pressure and make stops against Hartford. As a result, the guests only completed 73% of their passes, well below league average. And you're going to see some of the mechanisms here. Right off the bat, notice Aldair Sanchez high in the box as an ostensible wingback, and note how Shane Wheat, a central defender, chases a man downfield, limits any sort of clean passing angle, and forces Hartford to wastefully punt long. This was the story for almost the entirety of the game. You'd see the combinations of wingbacks and attacking midfielders really pin Hartford against the sidelines. Note Trevor Amon as well at the striker spot here, noting that the pass back is going to come, going to press that man, and making sure that Hartford is never able to cleanly play in over the top. This also applied to Sacramento when they were attacking. They kept up the intensity to stay in the final third, control the game, and never allow Hartford to counterattack with any sense of control. Again, three-man combination. You're getting Amon, you're getting Nick Ross at the attacking midfield spot, and Sanchez is pinned high, closing down and making sure that Sacramento can get into the box for a dangerous chance. It's this virtuous cycle where pressure keeps them in the final third, counter pressure keeps them there with the ball, and it all combines to create a winning opportunity for Sacramento. You see it here late in the game. Again, it's high pressure. Again, it's Wheat cutting out a pass that could have been dangerous. This time, because the Republic have moved into a two-striker formation, they're able to pay off the opportunity and score the winning goal. But it's just more of the same. These are the principles that Mark Briggs relies upon, and his ability to intensify them against a team like Hartford is why Sacramento is still a title threat all season long.
Can't wait to see that in San Jose in the coming months. They had to change a lot up after Cicerone and Roro go down, after Roro Lopez go down with long-term injuries. And there were a few weeks where Sacramento looked kind of broken, like they had no idea how to recover from it. And while the defense is impressive, I do frankly think that there is a Hartford asterisk. But just in general, after they kind of got their feet back from underneath them, Sacramento has quietly been Sacramento again. And you should be kind of terrified if you're the rest of the league.
I will say Danny Vitiello's performance in this game was top notch as well. So I think like the system made it where the shots were coming from more predictable areas, which gave Vitiello the best chance to save them. And he still does pull out a couple of worldies, I think. And yeah, overall, I do want to give some credit to Hartford too, in that they did create like some moments of danger, which definitely everybody can't say who's faced Sacramento Republic this year. But it did feel like a bit of a return to business as usual. And I do think Sac Republic probably, obviously, needing the winner 5 minutes from time is not something that they're going to want to do every single game. But I think they probably deserve something prior to that. And they do have a bit of persistence and maybe a bit of a mentality switch as well in winning this game, where most of the season this would sort of peter out into a draw, or they give up a goal and it becomes a 1-1.
Yeah, I think the thing, and you can definitely and accurately quibble with the fact that they were giving up chances and Vitiello had to stand on his head at times. But too often since the injuries, it's been, okay, are we going to play a 3-5-2 and throw Phillips and Amon up there? Or are we just going to stick with the 3-4-3? And there's not been the tactical growth that you need to like realize that we aren't the Republic that started 2024 so excellently. So even the fact that they did press a little bit more aggressively, they were willing to change up the shape midstream while still keeping to that principle. Not only was it the right call against this Hartford team, but I think it just showed that Briggs is finally getting around the bend and experimenting a little bit. So not perfect, but promising in a lot of ways that I think should be pretty hope-inducing if you're a Sacramento fan.
Especially with Sacramento, this is their 8th clean sheet of the season. Their 6th and that has been a 1-0 type of victory for Republic. I do at least want to give a shout out, or at least with Hartford. You really have to feel for them with some of these results. I mean, they've gone up against Charleston, New Mexico, Tampa Bay, and Sacramento and lost each of them 1-0. So they're playing some of these very tough teams in the league rather competitively, the 6-0 defeat to Louisville notwithstanding. But yeah, this is just Sacramento getting back to just typical Sacramento things.
As we kind of start to move on just a little bit, I do want to go ahead and thank our sponsor, goals.tv. John and I put out a little bit of content that is exclusive content. It won't be John all the time. It will unfortunately be me all the time. So sorry about it. Um, FB ref races. It's a fun little game where you connect one player to another player. It's basically just 12 minutes of vibes and naming random USL players. And who doesn't love doing that just a little bit? So check that out. It's a goals.tv exclusive. Go check us out down at the USL show. Same name as always. It's a free website. It's literally free. Cost you nothing. If you hate it, you won't. You can just delete your account and it costs you absolutely nothing. Check out goals.tv. Nicholas Murray, do you want to hop on FB ref races? Because I feel like you'll get them all in like 30 seconds. Be ridiculous.
You think he'd be the Rain Man of FBRF races?
I just want to kind of give some flowers real fast. Henny Derby is coming up tomorrow. CBS Sports Network, I do believe, and Golasso reached out to Elliot, also known as Yogi, and Kyle. Those are the guys who, started the Henny Derby. They were the ones that really were the ringleaders on the whole thing. You can check them out with Walkin' 90 and their own respective podcasts. And Golasso reached out to them, and they were on, Golasso. And I went back and I watched that whole segment several times because you're not going to meet better humans in the USL space than those guys. They are some of the hardest working people in this space, and they deserve their flowers 100%. And for them to get to tell the story of the Henny Derby, as opposed to what we've unfortunately heard over some broadcasts in the past, which is just Hennessy is gross. I don't like Hennessy. Why would they name the Derby that? For them to really tell the story, I think that's special. And it's special for them, but it's also special for just American soccer, just knowing that there are deep, rich, rivalries like that, even though it's only just a few years old.
Yeah, it was awesome to see them on CBS on Golasso like that. And like you said, told from the source, it's the way that it should be. And hopefully it indicates too, just like the fact that they are hopefully doing more. I think CBS could benefit from doing more of the supporter facing content to help differentiate from what is a more sterile sort of MLS. And like, as we're seeing stuff on, Fox and Apple TV and all this stuff, it's like the more organic approach could be a big win for USL and CBS.
I mean, in the run up to the Louisville Indy game that was on big CBS, like they did a good job of highlighting the Coopers, talking to the battalion. You love to see kind of that continued commitment, and it's only going to grow as this partnership keeps on flourishing. As CBS kind of figures out like what the deal is with the USL, even if they have people on the production side, even if they're talking to the league office, like we know they are, I think these things can take time. So to see in the first year of the deal, we're putting the Henny Derby on TV and we're getting the people who originated it to talk about why this matters. I think that's awesome to see.
Yeah, and just watching both segments for Elliot and Kyle, it was impossible to watch it and just not smile and just like think of how much the league has grown since 2019 to now, and just how much you've seen that the CBS deal has just been a really benefit for the league. And what like really stuck out to me is that CBS is going after people who are covering the league from like our level, from non-traditional media. And I think it's just a really great experience for anyone who's out there covering the league to just kind of have that elevated view from CBS.
The one other thing that the USL has kind of done, they brought back the second season of The Experience, and they did Richmond Kickers. And if you haven't watched that, you really, really should. I'm gonna be honest, I got a little teary-eyed a couple of times because Elliot Yogi was on there. And he was being pretty honest about how he kind of recently lost his dad And he was being honest about one of the reasons that he was even able to really just go back was because of the fan support. It's the supporters group and all that stuff is the reason he was able to get back into normal life. And he talked about how his dad kind of told him to leave a positive impact like everywhere he went. And you really see that through the Henny Derby. Because long after, hopefully, if everything goes right with these clubs, long after he's gone, the Henny Derby is still going to be around. And talk about really just honoring his dad, all that stuff, man. It really got me. You should check out the experience as well because it's just all been done so well. So on that note, let's kind of get one more match to kind of talk about that happen, and probably the most exciting match of the week, which was San Antonio losing 2-3 to New Mexico. New Mexico, they just keep doing it, man, and they're legit. I know New Mexico fans are, I don't want to say bitter, but they feel like they have not been given the flowers that they deserve, and I'm part of the problem. They really should be getting more love, and this was a match that they really showed just why they are so good. But also, San Antonio, they get some players back, and they're not all completely dead, and they suddenly have a heartbeat again. So that's a sign of life if you're San Antonio.
I mean, I hate to do this to New Mexico, but is San Antonio cooked? Like, really, that was the kind of result that really forces you to ask some questions. I mean, just to back up for a second, like this was a week where El Paso, Phoenix, San Antonio all had games that you're like, oh Lord, that's a really, really, really bad result and a really bad performance to get there. I did think systematically, like I understood what San Antonio was going for. You've got a very kind of widespread 4-1-3-2 with the goal of stretching out that New Mexico defense and getting Jorge Hernandez the ball in the midfield. The issue was that there kind of wasn't a second read. Like once New Mexico realized the off-ball movement isn't that great, Agadello's getting touches, but they're very deep in areas where he's not going to challenge the defense. We don't need to worry all that much. San Antonio, I mean, gave up that goal 2 minutes in because they were just over aggressive. They lost what they wanted to do in terms of the cohesion of the back line. And that's a credit to New Mexico as well, right? They knew that San Antonio was going to play that aggressively. They went with Akale and Flanagan on the wings to punish that with the speed. And the comeback was unbelievable. Their ability to see out that lead with 10 men for 45 minutes was unbelievable. The defensive effort was great. Maples and Herbert were pretty much mistake-free. Tambakis really, for me, has an argument to be the goalkeeper of the year. If not for the amazing saves, just the consistency and the leadership with the back line that has been a little bit in and out, a little bit inconsistent. You didn't think Kalen Ryden was going to be out all year. So much to like for New Mexico, so much to be concerned about if you're Alan Marcina hoping to have a job in a couple weeks.
This game will make there will be some coaches watching this game absolutely sick to themselves at the set piece defending throughout. 4 like really, really poor goals to concede on both sides. But none more egregious. And I think like what really highlights the fact that the San Antonio team is like, there is a genuine issue is up a man. Abdi has a free header from 10 yards out on a corner kick. You have an additional player. That should never happen. They literally cannot put more people in the box than you. So yeah, that is just that just to me signaled that there are like some genuine issues. If this, you can talk about like all the formations and movement and all of this stuff, and at the end of the day, like defending set pieces is such a critical part of being successful in this league. And if you're not doing that, the one area that you can control like the conditions and always understand like assignments and those sorts of things where unlike the rest of the game where you're just reacting to what's happening in real time. That to me is just like demonstrative of the fact that the San Antonio unit is just not at the races at the moment, unfortunately.
And this is San Antonio's worst losing streak. I believe now in club history, they previously had lost 4 in a row back in 2018. So it's just been a while since we've seen a San Antonio team be this difficult to just kind of watch at times. And the fact that they're coming up against a Phoenix team who's also been in disarray for reasons we've mentioned already on the podcast is going to make their upcoming matchup this week all the more intriguing.
Sorry, Phil, you were going to say something?
I was just going to say new manager bounce. Phoenix is trying to squeak it in before San Antonio can get there.
Is there even, with how everything ended in Phoenix, I know we're kind of going back, and I know we have predictions later. With how everything ended, can you even get a new manager bounce from that? I think they might get like new manager depression.
Well, shout out to my boy Diego Gomez, who's taken over as the interim. One, he was kind of the head of youth at Queensboro, and when he was out in Queens, he hit me up and DM'd me and bought me pupusas for lunch, so he's a G. 2, he went to Nisa for like a year and then became the head coach of Irvine Zeta, left Irvine Zeta for Phoenix without ever coaching a single game, and now he's just like running Phoenix Rising. So all the best to Diego Gomez. This is going to be just the meat grinder for him for the rest of 2024 in that environment.
Marcelo Bielsa leaving a Serie A job after 9 days vibes.
Yeah.
Let's get one last kind of match that happened. Ryan, you yourself fixed Charleston. Forget that they were down or that they were up a man. Charleston got done watching was it Lord of the Rings or was it Star Trek?
Star
Trek. And yeah, they're alive again. Now, can Charleston do it against 11 men? Probably. If we're being honest, probably yes. But also, they got to do it against 11 men.
It really was like a tale of before and after the sending off. And Charleston, I think there is a concern about the fact that chance creation 11v11 against North Carolina was really poor, and North Carolina almost doubled them in shots in the first half and touches in their penalty area. So I think in general, it just like sent the message that one, North Carolina definitely came with a good game plan that was undone, unfortunately, by just a wild sort of challenge in the end. But that Anderson-Conway partnership like really did start to feel like, okay, this is actually maybe something now. So I have to feel a little bit for North Carolina because it was an absolute shooting gallery once they went down to 10, and Charleston were able to come away with a big victory in the end. But yeah, I still do have like some concerns that Charleston's offense, which was humming along like so effectively in the opening parts of the season, has just sputtered in an even matchup. And they really only turned it on once they had the man advantage.
Yeah, I mean, this was a game where, and granted, North Carolina has the best XG defense in the entire USL. Like, nobody breaks them down. But if you're Charleston, who puts one shot on net in the first half, that's not great. And hey, Ben Pierman was cooking in the second half, immediately brings Jackson Conway on, changes the shape up, so you're essentially in a 4-3-3. Once that sort of works, but not really works, he gets Nathan Dos Santos on, and you keep tweaking the shape even further, get more bodies upfield, give Prince Sadie his debut to kind of add that dribbling, that speed on the wing. It paid off in that extra time period, or added time to be sure. Like, obviously Myers scoring for fun just because. I am worried because of what we saw when it was even strength. But I think that this is the sort of win that gives you confidence in a way that's kind of hard to quantify. Like, Charleston's been in the funk for a month. breaking that in such resounding fashion is going to be great for the mentality. I'm kind of trusting the process here henceforth.
Yeah, I think interestingly to take away from this match was, well, first I got North Carolina to score first correctly in my bet at the time. But if you're looking at this, Charleston still has a lot going forward with them. This was the 5th time this year that they've scored 4 goals or more in a match. Yes, this was coming up against 10 players, but it really is a game that they needed to just get confidence back into the team. Like we had mentioned the tweet that you could watch 3.5 Star Trek films since the last time they scored a goal. At that point, it is really just like any port in a storm, just like find the back of the net, try to get the performances back on track. And after Birmingham this week, they have 2 excellent opportunities against Hartford and Miami back to back that they could really find their form again.
I think there's something so bizarre in the psychology of, just sports, right? Because they train a lot, obviously. I was able to go down and watch one of Charleston's training sessions, and they do a lot of, at least the one that I went to, there's a lot of finishing, there's a lot of shooting, there's a lot of moving the ball around. They do all this stuff all the time. The amount of times they see the ball hit the back of the net, even your defenders, your center backs are getting time to strike the ball into the back of the net. And yet for some reason, when it's the actual game, like the relief on their face when they saw one go in an actual game was crazy, right? Like it was like they had never done it before. Despite the day before, I can almost guarantee you that they put 100+ balls into the net. Just seeing it in a game and just seeing the relief that they had of, oh yeah, we can still do this. We have the physical ability to score. I think that may unlock something within the Battery, that they're also taking on a Birmingham team this next week or on Friday that lost 4-1. So you're going to have your opportunities to score. I think that Charleston is about to right the ship. Meanwhile, North Carolina, just don't get stupid, Reds, and your defense will take care of the rest. I mean, because that defense is so good. It's so good.
And Phil, you mentioned it with Olex Anderson. That dude was on fire in transition against the Battery. Like when he gets ahead of steam, no one in the league is stopping him.
Well, let's go ahead and get into some predictions. I was kind of toying with a couple of of doing a little bit of Jaeger with the Richmond match because that one was insane. But I think we'll talk about it in a little bit in, with the preview of the Henny Derby, which is Richmond versus Madison. Madison, who just got Garrett McLaughlin that we talked about last week. They looked like just an even better team, after he is out there for them. And then you have Richmond, who come away with a penalty win in the Jägermeister Cup because they do well in that cup. And also they got multiple goals in that game. It's a derby match. This is just historically a matchup that the team that you think should win never does. It just feels like it never goes the way that it's supposed to. How do we think that this one is going to go, John?
Yeah, I mean, these are 2 teams that, despite what we're seeing on the score sheet, like chance creation wise, underlying numbers wise, have been pretty tepid overall. With McLaughlin in and for Madison, you like what you're getting. He started on the left wing in his debut, didn't really get involved in the box, but everything you want out of him as a second striker, as somebody who's moving and creating just by dragging the defense out of the way and creating holes was there. I think that's only going to continue. If you're Richmond, like the fact that you got a brace from Neil Vinyals just poaching on the edge of the box, really getting a nice connection with Adrian Billhart, who started on the left, like that's kind of an innovation you love to see, especially with Terzaghi getting into the mix. Nathan Ane starting as well. I think Richmond is probably a couple weeks away from kind of finding their comfort level with all of the familiar faces back in. Madison is there already, and they're only getting stronger. So dub for forward Madison.
Ryan?
Yeah, I've backed Madison with this one. I think just if you look back at the previous results of this fixture, Madison has owned the series pretty recently, and that's basically what you've seen with Kyle's segment, that he had the Henny Darby Trophy alongside him during his segment on Golazo. It's been 634 days since Richmond has last beaten Forward Madison in a match, and even longer if you wanted to go back and find the last time Richmond beat Forward Madison at City Stadium. I think Forward Madison is going to take this one.
Yeah, it's Madison. It's no disrespect to the Kickers, but I just think that the results results are in Madison's favor, and they're gonna ride high off of the back of their new arrival as well. So yeah, I just think Madison too much firepower, get it done.
I almost took Richmond. I really thought about it. I just believe in the team that's not supposed to win just wins it, but I just feel like it would be absolutely ridiculous for me not to go with Madison. That said, we got our first real case of the USL show curse last week, with Lexington taking down Greenville in one of the dumbest matches I've watched. Sorry, Lexington. So congrats, Richmond, on your win, because we have all taken Madison. Next up, we have Tormenta taking on One Knox. Tormenta, I mean, I don't know if results are necessarily showing, but they feel like a team that's slowly starting to get in gear. One Knox started off hot. They kind of fell off just a bit, and they still haven't quite found their solid footing since getting off to such a hot start. Who do you got?
I was having a real tough time buying into One Knox in the past couple of weeks. I thought that their midfield structure was really poor. They were giving up chances way too easily. That changed against Madison in a major way. Tormenta, on the other hand, so up and down. I love everything about the talent on that roster. I think that Ian Cameron has set up that back three system so effectively for them in a way where you feel like the results should be better. Kind of two teams on different sides of the equation right now. I'm going with a draw, and I don't have a good feel on it.
Yeah, I've picked Knoxville to win this one. You have Tormenta, who enter this match with the second most shots taken in USL 1, currently only behind Greenville, but they also enter this match with 6 matches without a win in their last 6 games. And interestingly, with Knoxville, their last 6 victories across all competitions have been win to nils, which I think is making them very tough to break down. I could certainly see Tormenta finding the back of the net in this one, but I have Knoxville prevailing in the end.
Yeah, I have a Knoxville win. I just think Tormenta's form, I don't trust them. And Knox, I don't necessarily trust either, but I do think that they are more trustworthy, unfortunately.
I mean, when you see the 3-2 loss to Chattanooga for Tormenta, it comes with a stupid red card at the end of the first, and it all just kind of flips on its head. Roberts with an absolute banger of a goal, but that was a couple weeks ago. And, after that, you get a 1-1, technically draw, but then you get the penalties with the Jägermeister. Tormenta was really rolling before that red card. I think they're going to be able to find that form again. I think they're going to be able to do that again against this One Knox team, despite them being a very, very tough team to break down defensively. I am taking Tormenta. Next up, we have Rhode Island taking on Indy 11. Rhode Island, who has learned to win matches, good luck the rest of the league, versus Indy, who we talked about last time, was finally defeated. But, I mean, they're still such a good team. These are two good teams going at each other who have seemed to finally, Indy's been clicking, but, finally really clicking. strength on strength, iron sharpen iron. Who you got, John?
Interesting matchup, kind of a mirror image on both sides here with the way that Rhode Island have succeeded in a 3-5-2 where your left wing back, Jorge Quazera, has been so good. And then Indy kind of 3-5-2, 3-4-3, but it's Aiden Stanley at the same role. Indy having this long a break, I think it's 13 days off, and knowing that they've got to think about the Open Cup game that's upcoming, kind of weigh their resources. I don't know if they're going to necessarily look as good as they did. I think this game ends in a draw, but don't take that away from Rhode Island being on the come up.
Yeah, I mean, you have 11 goals scored by Rhode Island in their last 5 games and just 1 defeat in that time. I think this is going to be a very fun match, a very competitive one, especially compared to the fact that we've started the year, we saw 4 0-0 draws from Rhode Island, so they've certainly turned it around. I have this one to be a scoring draw.
I went with Rhode Island in this one. I just think there is something about the way that they've clicked. I think Kano is settling into like what he what can make this team the most dangerous. And I think on top of that, Indy went a very, very long time without losing and then stumbled at home against Orange County. I know they've had some time off, but yeah, getting back going after that, I think Rhode Island are carrying quite a bit of momentum into this match. So whatever else happens, I think, and they finally broke the duck at home in terms of winning matches at home. So I think, I think they keep the train rolling. No El Paso locomotive, pun intended.
I'm taking Indy, and it's kind of for the opposite reason that you said, Phil. I am such a big proponent of sometimes having a good team sit in a loss for a long time just really gets them going. I mean, not just to kind of bring up my own battle scars, right? But, Louisville lost kind of embarrassingly to Rhode Island. They had a week to sit in it, and they just, eventually they just rip apart a pretty decent Birmingham team. I think that Indy, who is a good team, has spent 11 or 12, 13 days just sitting in a loss. And, Open Cup match coming up or not, they're not happy about it. I think that Indy is going to come out on fire. They're going to be well rested. I think they're going to get the win. We got now Detroit taking on Tampa Bay. Listen, I really dig what Detroit is doing. I think that they are, yes, it was Miami, but also I think that just like we kind of talked about with Charleston, they saw multiple goals at the back of the net, and I think that's going to fill them with confidence. But you also have Tampa Bay, who they're still Tampa Bay. They're still one of the top teams in this league. This is going to be a good litmus test to see just where is Detroit right now.
Yeah, I mean, I know we've talked very positively about Detroit this year. I'm starting to kind of have some seeds of doubt in my head as to whether they're one of the big boys in the East. And Tampa Bay, for as inconsistent as they are, when they're at their best, they might be the best team in the league. I've got the Rowdies coming out hot after the Loudon loss, really taking advantage of the Detroit midfield with what they do with those forwards. And so, yeah, Rowdies win.
Yeah, I was very close to taking Detroit with this one, just thinking Keyworth has always typically been a fortress up until Kaler's Birmingham Legion walked in there with a victory. But yeah, I think it's still a few questions left to be asked within Detroit recently, but I've flipped my vote over to Tampa Bay.
We're keeping it boring tonight. I'm taking Tampa as well. But same way, I just don't put a ton of stock in Detroit's big win against Miami. I also, take a grain of salt with Tampa Bay coming up against the powerhouse Loudoun United. you take that loss with a grain of salt. That's just that happens in Loudoun, right? So yeah, I mean, sometimes you just end up on the end of a buzzsaw, like Ryan Martin's Loudoun United. So I think, but no, I am taking Tampa Bay. I think to John's point, it's like both of these teams are good on their day. Tampa's maybe wavered a bit more, but their ceiling is a lot higher than Detroit's. So I think they are the safer pick.
Kind of talking about that Loudoun super late, but I did talk to Hugo Faru on for the glove of the game, and after the recording was over, we kind of talked a little bit, and I told him, I was like, hey, with kind of what you guys changed up, at the end of the Miami match, like I was like, I feel pretty good about you guys facing up against Tampa Bay. I feel like it'll work. And he was being nothing but complimentary. He was being nothing but just, Tampa Bay is a really good team. But he was also like, yeah, we feel really good about the change we made. We feel really good about it. He was very confident going into it. So I maybe Loudoun has fully turned a corner and, kind of jokingly buzzsaw, but also maybe kind of real. That said, just like I talked about sitting in what you've done. I mean, Tampa Bay does have to sit in a 2-0 loss to Loudoun. And even though I think Loudoun is a pretty good team, traditionally they're not. And a lot of players who've been in this league for a long time know that. I do think, unfortunately, Detroit is about to get the best version of Tampa Bay that we've seen in a minute. I am going to take Tampa Bay. Finally, the match that everybody is waiting for, San Antonio versus Phoenix. San Antonio, who had that loss that we just talked about, taking on Phoenix, who is kind of on fire. Neither team seem like they fully want to win, but will someone win, John? Oh no, John's dead. How did John get the plug pulled on him before Alan Marcina? The world may never know. Ryan.
Yeah, I feel like this is going to be another edition of the, I guess I'll trademark it, the stoppable force versus movable object derby. But you have a series all time that's had 7 games be over 2.5 goals, 6 games be at least both teams to score. I'm picking a draw with this one. Just whenever you have these types of matchups where it feels like neither team wants to win, a draw just always seems like the most fair result. And no, I don't believe San Antonio has ever lost 6 straight.
I have Phoenix in this one only because for my money, when you put, like, when all else is equal, which in this case we're starting from scratch, assistant manager stepping into the head job, there's some like drama around the team and all that. You really just have to rely on your raw materials. And for my money, pound for pound, Phoenix is just a more talented squad than San Antonio. So I am backing Phoenix to win just based off of the fact that they have more raw talent to put on the field than San Antonio does.
John?
Yeah, back and alive. I'm feeling like both of these teams are kind of in a pit. Based on everything you're hearing out of Phoenix right now, like, do you really back them to come out and look good against San Antonio? Not really. And after that Memphis game, like, that was terrible too. And then San Antonio, like we talked about it earlier, they're playing horrendously. I think if either team gets a win here, it's likelier to be San Antonio, but this has like miserable draw that makes no one feel any better written all over it.
I took San Antonio purely because it's at home. I have no other reason besides that. I mean, when you ask, is Phoenix possibly going to come out and look? No, they're not. They're just not. I don't think San Antonio is going to come out and look good either. So I feel like this is going to be a horrendous 0-0 draw, or this is going to turn into one of the 5-4 victories that no one defends. It's only vibes, and the vibes are bad. but the vibes are bad in favor of San Antonio for me. So that is all of that. Any final USL thoughts for the night?
Shout out Charleston, who look like they're getting Ezekiel Soto, USU 17, signing him out of the Dynamo system.
Big Bogart bomb. Kind of drops out of nowhere. So
just gotta keep filling that Barajas pipeline back up. Just gotta keep funneling those youth products in.
As we've learned with Barajas, you gotta spend money to make money, baby.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's go ahead and get to final thoughts of the night. John, let's go ahead and go to you. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I watched The Bear. I did things like that. Maybe. Oh, am I alive? Am I talking? Okay, yeah. Yeah, so I mean, I watched. This is so weird. It is so laggy. Yeah, let's pass this on to Ryan, and I'll get back in here.
Ryan.
Yeah, I feel like we're just all going to recommend or at least mention that we've been watching The Bear. So I'm up to, I think, the 5th episode. And certainly, at least from the season, I won't spoil. I've not expected some of the cameos either returning or shown so far. So it's been fun to watch and have another season of.
Phil?
The Bear is definitely being watched, and also Sunday nights it's now appointment television because House of the Dragon is back, and that is just like I'm all about that right now. Also, the reason I missed last week's episode is because we had a work meeting up in Lansing, Michigan, at the home of the Lansing Lugnuts, the Oakland A's High A affiliate, and your boy got an official Midwest League baseball. It was partially because the West Michigan Whitecaps, who they were playing that night, were hitting absolute tanks, and they won like 15-3 or something like that. It was a massacre for the hometown Lugnuts, but I did get a baseball out of it. So here's to the Midwest League.
Real USL 1 OGs will remember, I think the Lansing Ignite used to play at that park as well.
I have a scarf somewhere that is the Greenville Triumph Lansing Ignite half and half inaugural game scarf. It's somewhere.
That's crazy.
That is USL heritage, people. All my years going to baseball games, still have never caught one. Minor league.
This is only my second one, to be fair.
Like, I've been to so many minor league games. I figure just by the way of existing at a minor league ballpark, it want to eventually fall in your lap. Just never has. Never.
I've gotten a foul ball at a major league ballpark, weirdly, and just not at a minor league one.
It's funny. I've gotten two baseballs from 2 minor league baseball games, and both of them were in the Midwest League, and both of them were about 20 something years apart because the first one I ever got was at a Kane County Cougars game in the Midwest League. They are now an independent team because they got contracted when the minors like shrunk in the pandemic or whatever. So anyways, fun fact, little trivia for you. The Midwest League.
The closest I came to getting a ball was at a Reds game when I was like 10, and it was batting practice. And somehow, I don't know how you hit a ball foul in batting practice. I feel like that's not the point. Like, it doesn't make sense, but dude smoked a ball foul. And there was a man beside me, 3 feet from beside me, wasn't paying attention. I only saw it at the last minute, smoked him in the chest. And then like dude's like grabbing his chest. I thought he's dead, and there's a swarm of 12-year-olds all trying to get the ball over his dead body.
Just Lord of
Unreal.
the Flies in the bleachers.
But that is the closest I've gotten. Kind of speaking of, well, so my wife and I go on a lot of we always try to make it to all the minor league stadiums. We enjoy the minor league baseball scene. I speaking of just kind of been in the chat, I'm a big River Dogs guy. We are both big River Dogs guy. The Charleston River Dogs, we love that little stadium. It is so much fun. And so if you go down to Charleston and check out the Battery, go check out the River Dogs because it is a blast. It's just a fun little area. Also, we talked about Asheville earlier. The Asheville, oh my gosh, what do they call it? The Tourists. Yeah. They play like basically inside of a rock, and it's sick.
It's at the base of the Asheville City soccer stadium as well. So where the soccer stadium is perched up on the hill, the Tourists at the bottom. And I will say the Tourists scoreboard is my favorite scoreboard in all of sports because it has the visitors versus the tourists, which is just funny to me.
And it's hilarious. We enjoyed it. We were big fans. I guess that's really all for me because I was just going to talk about how we bought the rich people seats and sat in the club seats at a minor league baseball game. 100% worth, would absolutely do it again. And for the both of us, it was still cheaper than one U.S. men's national team ticket. So go support minor league baseball, I guess. So, yeah. Thank you guys so much for listening. Go check out Goals TV. Thank them for sponsoring us. Check out FB Ref Races. Check out all of the things on all the content. And for the first and only time tonight, here's Alan's voice.
Thank you for watching another episode of the USL Show. The USL Show is now proudly part of the Protagonist Podcast family. Please go to protagonistsoccer.com to check out more work. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see everyone again next time.